ancient buildings are fragile. There are the creeping destroyers, wind and rain, roots and frost, the inexorable tug of gravity. And then there are the earthquakes and the fires, and people with urgent needs and short memories. It's no secret and no surprise, in short, that the vast majority of ancient Roman buildings are gaping and gutted or gone. But a handful of Roman buildings remain intact, from frontier outposts to an imperial palace. This video and its sequel will explore some of the most remarkable examples. Let's get started. We'll begin with the best preserved Roman lighthouse, in fact, the only well-preserved Roman lighthouse. This is the Tower of Hercules, located near the city of A Coruña in northwestern Spain. The tower is 185 feet, or 57 meters, tall. Designed to protect ships plying the busy trade routes to Gaul and Britain, it was constructed, or at least rebuilt, around 100 AD. The exterior has been remodeled, but the vaulted rooms and long stairways inside are Roman originals. Our next category is the best preserved Roman fortress. After some deliberation, I narrowed the field to 3 candidates. The first is pictured on screen, Qasr Bshir, a small 3rd century fort in the Jordanian desert that originally housed a cavalry patrol unit. It's been abandoned for almost a millennium and a half, and the barracks within have collapsed. The outer walls, however, remain almost intact. Our second candidate for best preserved Roman fortress is el-Dabadib, located in Egypt's Karga oasis. This imposing structure, built around the beginning of the 4th century, was intended to protect local settlements from nomadic raiders. This it did for hundreds of years, until the settlements sank back into the desert, leaving the castle a remote ruin. My vote for best preserved Roman fortress, however, goes to the castle of Zenobia, now called Halabia, on the banks of the Euphrates in eastern Syria. This fortress, built by Justinian to guard against Persian invasion, was virtually a self-contained town, complete with a marketplace, a bath complex, and 2 churches. The most impressive feature, however, was and is the massive walls. Since we're talking fortifications, let's turn to city walls. There are dozens of well-preserved Roman wall circuits, the most famous being the walls of Constantinople, shown here, and the Aurelianic walls of Rome itself. An especially impressive example is the wall of Amida, modern Diyarbakir, in southeastern Turkey. Built, like the castle of Zenobia, by Justinian, they protected one of the most important fortress cities along the Roman-Persian frontier, and still loom, huge and somber, over the modern city. The walls of Aosta, in northern Italy, are another excellent example. Built during the reign of Augustus, they survive almost in their entirety, forming a neat rectangle around Aosta's well-preserved Roman street grid. My favorite Roman city walls, however, are the ones that ring the Turkish town of Iznik, ancient Nicaea. Built during the 3rd century, these massive defenses, a textbook example of late Roman fortification, have survived almost unchanged. I once spent a very pleasant afternoon exploring their huge, projecting towers. Now, for the sake of variety, we turn to the best preserved commercial buildings. Our first example, pictured here, is the Horrea, Epagathiana, et Epaphroditiana, located in Ostia, Rome's port. This warehouse, built in the 2nd century AD, consisted of a central courtyard ringed by storerooms. Though it was originally much taller, the upper stories were plundered for building material in the Middle Ages. The ground floor survives more or less intact. Our next candidate for best preserved commercial building is the Cryptoporticus of Arles in southern France. This was a U-shaped subterranean passageway containing a series of shops and storerooms. The form above it vanished centuries ago. The Cryptoporticus, however, remains as it was. Rome's famous markets of Trajan are likely the best preserved commercial complex in the entire Roman Empire. Trajan's Forum has all but vanished, save some foundations and the Great Column. But the markets beside it, an elaborate array of shops, apartments, and offices, all built in brick-faced concrete, survive almost in their entirety. Perhaps the most impressive component is the Great Hall, shown here, an expansive space lined by shops and still covered by a vault of Roman concrete. Let's continue to the best preserved Roman theaters. As in the case of forts and city walls, there are many candidates, which I'll narrow down to a few in the interest of time. Our first example, shown here, is the Roman theater of Orange in southern France. Louis XIV called the massive wall behind the stage, which is 120 feet, or 37 meters, high, the finest wall in my kingdom. The theater of Bosra, in southern Syria, is even better preserved. Though converted into a fortress during the Middle Ages, much of the building was covered and conserved by a thick layer of wind-blown sand. When unearthed, the building was found to be virtually complete. The theater at Aspendos, in southern Turkey, is equally well preserved and much larger. The Bosra theater had room for about 6,000 spectators. The theater of Aspendos could seat almost 3 times as many. Although the Aspendos theater became a castle in the Middle Ages, it remains in almost pristine condition. Before we move on from entertainment buildings, I'd like to shout out one of the best preserved Roman stadiums, located at Aphrodisias in southern Turkey. This impressive structure, which could seat 30,000, has changed little in the past 18 centuries. In my experience, there are few better places to sit and think about the past. To end on a high note, we'll close with the best preserved Roman palace, the Aula Palatina, or Basilica of Constantine, in Trier, Germany. Though now a church, this was the reception hall and throne room of a palace built by Constantine and his father Constantius. The building has lost its ancient marble floor and wall paneling. It was damaged by renovations during the Renaissance and burned out during World War II. But to stand inside and look toward the apse, where Constantine and his successors sat in their splendor, is to glimpse what it must have been like to be in the presence of a Roman emperor. I hope you enjoyed this first video on the best preserved Roman buildings. For the location of every building mentioned, check out the map linked in the description. If you liked this video, you might enjoy my forthcoming book, Naked Statues, Fat Gladiators, and War Elephants. You'll find more information in the description. Stay tuned for the second video, which will discuss amphitheaters, houses, temples, and more. And, as always, thanks for watching.